Welcome back, guys. So not too long ago, we took a look at the BrawlerGen USB gamepad from Retro Fighters. This was for use on the Sega Genesis Mini, Mac, PC, and Switch. Could be used on a lot of different devices that utilize USB. For me, I did like this controller quite a bit, but I don't have too much use for USB gamepads, so I did delegate this for use on my Mister, and I've been using it quite a bit since. Works great. I really dig using this, but the one I was waiting for was the version that can be used on the Sega Saturn and Sega Genesis. It has a dual connector. And I just noticed something looking at these two boxes, that the USB one says Retro Fighters up there, has their logo, but this one doesn't. I wonder why they did that. That's a strange omission there. I don't know. That's weird. I would imagine you would want your branding right on the front of the box, but they do have it elsewhere. Just kind of strange. I just noticed that while I was recording this. And the other thing I just noticed, which I don't know why I didn't notice because I've been staring at these for a few days now, is the color scheme's a little different. So the Saturn and Genesis one, different colored buttons and whatnot. Practically, it's the same controller, essentially. Just some minor differences there. So we're going to go ahead, unbox this thing, test it out real quick, do a little teardown as well, give you guys my thoughts on this. I know there's a lot of Retro Fighters fans out there. They have been listening to the customers and really making sure they're making some quality stuff out there. And hey, a lot of people appreciate it, and this may or may not be for you. So I just hope this video will help you, in your decision-making capabilities, whatever you want to call it, right? So first controller to feature a 2-in-1 connector that's compatible with both the Sega Genesis, Megadrive, and Saturn. And it does work on the Sega Master System as well. Compatible with original, and most third-party systems. So it kind of repeats a little bit of information there. High quality and responsive D-pad, we'll find that out. But if it's the same as that one, that was a pretty damn good D-pad in my opinion. Comfortable, responsive analog stick. And the analog stick, it's nice. It responds as an 8-way D-pad for games that don't use an analog stick, for like the Sega Saturn. Because the Sega Saturn, there was the 3D pad. So this does function as that, but also that analog stick can be used for games that don't utilize it. So that's pretty darn cool. And on the Sega Genesis as well, it registers as an 8-way D-pad. Reposition mode button, compatible with 6-button and 3-button games. I believe you hold like the mode button down when you turn on your Sega Genesis if you want to use it in a different mode. Extra long 10-foot cord. So let's just go ahead, open this thing up. Take a look. Set that aside. Oh, snap. We got a little pin. Get that close up for you. I didn't know or it's a keychain, my bad. Actually, I need a new keychain. The one that I have was like an NES controller and the damn thing broke. I'll use this one. Hell yeah. Cool stuff. What else do we got? I think there's a manual. Little manual. Explains some stuff, I'm sure. And why wouldn't it? Just explains things for Saturn, Genesis. The mode button allows you to switch between 6 and 3-button mode. In order to activate the mode function, you must hold down the mode button when turning on your system. Yep, there you go. Ultimate and compatibility, Sega Genesis, Megadrive 32X, Sega CD, Master System, Sega Saturn, and most third-party systems. Please note that a few select Saturn 32X games are incompatible. Okay, don't care about the manual too much. Let's go ahead and get this thing out. There she is. Yeah, the buttons are the darker gray this time. Very nice. Do like the way the D-pad feels. Nice little analog. Got an L and R up there. It is a comfortable controller. You can't deny that. They do make comfortable controllers. This thing's got a little heft to it. Let's go ahead and take a look at the cable. We'll test this out on the Mega SG from Analog and the Sega Saturn. But there we go, dual connectors. Focus. You got your Sega Saturn right there. Plug it in. And your Sega Genesis. So there you go. Nice stuff. Really long cable. Very thick and quality cable. So there is that. Let's go ahead and do a quick teardown on this and take a look at the insides. Okay, so upon tearing it down, we do have, 2, 4, 6, 7 screws. Pretty easy to take out. Just be careful. with this controller, I definitely would not recommend, definitely do not open this yourself unless you really need to. The reason being is because this controller can be a little delicate and a little bit of a pain in the ass to put back together. But upon getting it open, some interesting things here. So I see where the weight is coming from. They have rumble motors in here, but these systems don't support that, so they're not connected. I find that kind of strange that they just used rumble motors that were not connected. Very odd choice indeed. Maybe it was cheaper to repurpose some rumble motors than to just put like some metal plating in there. Because sometimes they'll have, I've seen companies use like, you know, a little metal brick type thing that fits in the rumble motor section. I know Retro Fighters, they're doing that with some of their controllers because people, you know, wanted the controllers to have a little bit more heft to it. It's not anything about quality. A lot of controllers do this kind of stuff, so I get it. I just kind of found it a little weird that they used rumble motors instead of metal plates. But everything else here looks pretty good. I'm not seeing anything that's extremely sloppy or anything. The buttons, the membranes are very decent quality. They do have that clear look to them, but don't, you know, sometimes I see those and you just automatically could tell they're not that great. But for these, they're not too mushy. They're not too stiff. They're right in the middle. They feel good for the most part. Can't complain too much on that. Now, the one thing that I do have to point out, and you need to be careful, is with this controller, the L and R button, if you're not careful taking this apart or putting it together, you can rip out the cables that are soldered from the boards for the L and R button to the main board. You could rip those out very easily, so be careful. Like I said, there's really no reason to open this thing. If you don't open it, you shouldn't have any problems. But when I took this apart, put it back together, you know, the buttons kind of shift around. It's a pain in the butt to put back together. Let's just, you know, put it that way. Not the worst, but you know, it's got its quirks getting it back together. So if you don't need to, don't take it apart, and you should be fine. So let's go ahead and test this thing out. First up, let's plug it into the Mega SG. This will work in original hardware as well. I just wanted to plug it into this just to make it a little easier for myself to record. But there we go. Let's test this thing out. Like Street Fighter would be good, and we could test out the analog stick. We got to throw those Hadoukens, those little Hadoukis, and the Dragon Punches. Oh, snap. Nothing special I had to do. The controller's just working. 6 buttons, analog stick, nothing that you got to set up. But, you know, some games, that 3 and 6 button mode will have to be swapped around. So keep that in mind, but that's standard with all Sega controllers. For some, you have to change that mode. And I just got my ass handed to me. But yeah, the analog stick's functioning and feeling very well. So can't really complain. You know, I mainly test fighting games just to see if I could do the moves fairly easily, especially Street Fighter. So there's that. Okay. Full, get out of here. The only thing that I kind of notice is, I mean, not too much. I don't know if I had noticed that in the USB one. I haven't watched that video in a while. But using the D-pad, my thumb does touch the analog occasionally, but it's not like registering it or anything, but it does touch it very slightly. I mean, how else could it? I mean, maybe if this was shifted over just a little tiny bit, but overall, it's not bad. I actually really dig using the analog stick this way. Like I said, it registers 8-way D-pad for games that wouldn't normally use an analog stick, so that is cool. So there's that, and the Sega Genesis functions just fine as it should. Let's go ahead, swap on over to the Sega Saturn. Okay, so here we go, Sega Saturn. Let's just jump into a fighting game, man. Okay, so here we go. Analog's working just fine. Let's jump into it. Huh. So there we go. I didn't want this to be a super long video, but since I've already used this, the USB gamepad version, I did test on various systems, and it worked. It worked just fine. On this with Sega Saturn and Genesis, I do see, you know, a lot of people being interested in the dual purpose nature of this. It works great. I think it's a quality controller. For me, it's, you know, I may use it off and on, especially for the Sega Saturn, because there's not really that many options out there for good 3D pad. So that's mainly what I would use this for. I have a lot of options for the Sega Genesis, so I'm not really too worried about using this for that. But for the Saturn, definitely cool as a replacement for the 3D pad. But if you guys are interested, I will have a link in the description if you want to check this controller out. I can't wait to see what they have in store for us. Can't wait to see what the future holds for retro fighters. Hopefully they start embracing the 2.4 gigahertz and maybe Bluetooth wireless options out there for different controllers and systems. I think that would be really cool. The one I'm really looking forward to is the Dreamcast controller from them. Very slim on options out there, so really can't wait to see that. But hey, really do appreciate you guys. And with that said, I will catch y'all next time. Peace out, bye-bye, and boom. Bye.